The sun barely broke through the heavy clouds, casting a dull gray over the scene of devastation. The survivors stood silent, eyes red, breaths shaky. The air was thick with grief. On the ground, carefully placed and wrapped in cloth, were the heads of Garen, Rick, and Rex, positioned with a reverence that hurt even more. This wasn't just death. This was heartbreak carved into reality. Lisa dropped to her knees, sobbing uncontrollably. "Uncle Garen, Uncle Rick, Rex," she cried, her voice breaking over and over again. "Why did you all leave them?" she wailed. "Why did they have to die?" No one had an answer. No one could breathe right, let alone speak. The wind moved gently through the waves, as if the world itself mourned with them. Evan stood at the edge of the clearing, his fists clenched so tight his knuckles turned white. He turned to face the sea, his eyes locked onto the distant shoreline of Belwick. His voice cracked, then roared, "Do you hear me, Breaker? I will come get you, even if it's the death of me. I will hunt you to the ends of the earth." He clenched his jaw so violently blood trickled from his gums. Then, with everything inside him, he screamed, "You hear me, Breaker? I will be the one to break you!" Everyone turned to Evan, some in shock, others with tears still flowing. But something shifted in that moment. His rage, his promise. It lit something inside each of them. A fire. Evan looked back at the heads of the fallen. His voice trembled as he spoke again. "I promise you all, Garen, Rick, Rex, we will build the haven you dreamed of. An army so fierce humanity will rise again. We will take back what we've lost." Pamela stepped forward, placing a hand on Evan's shoulder. "I promise too," she whispered. Maria followed, nodding with tears in her eyes. "Me too." One by one, the others stepped forward. "Me too. Me too. I will. Count me in." Until suddenly, all of them were chanting in unison, "Me too. Me too." Their voices trembling but rising, louder, fiercer. Evan looked at them, tears rolling freely now. Chris stepped up beside him. "I feel you, brother," he said quietly. "I should have helped them. I was so afraid. That monster, it wasn't just strong. It was something else. Something out of this world." I looked at Chris, my voice low. To be honest, I was afraid too. That thing. It wasn't just killing us. It was studying us, playing with us. And the truth is, we're weak. We need to become stronger. Much stronger. The sun had dipped low, painting the sea in streaks of burnt orange and violet. The soft rumble of waves brushing the side of the ship was the only sound, save for the quiet rustling of clothes, the occasional cough, and the distant creak of metal as the vessel swayed. Near the back of the ship, a small family huddled close together on an old tarp laid over the deck. The mother, her arms thin and face gaunt, opened a dented can of preserved beans and shared it evenly between 3 battered tin cups. When the smallest child gave Evan a shy smile, he reached into his bag, pulled out a chocolate bar and a can of peaches, and set them gently on the table. "Here you guys go," Evan said softly, sliding the treats over. Their eyes lit up with gratitude, wide and shining. He pulled out a pack of chips next, and leaned in with a grin. "This one's our little secret," he whispered, winking at the little girl. She giggled and smiled up at him, her laughter a rare spark of joy in the gloom. Her husband held their daughter on his lap, gently stroking her tangled hair as she ate, the spoon shaking ever so slightly in her small hand. Her eyes, though rimmed with exhaustion, still shimmered with something rare. Wonder. They didn't speak. They didn't need to. Their silence was louder than words, full of gratitude, sorrow, and a brittle hope. From a distance, Evan watched them. He didn't move, didn't speak. The image before him struck deep, deeper than he expected. A broken world had brought them to this point, yet here they were, still breathing, still trying. And in that moment, it all connected. The blood, the loss, the screams still echoing in his head. Garen, Rick, Rex. Their names were a pulse in his chest. Not just friends, not just comrades, foundations. They had fought, not for glory, not for revenge, but so that this family could sit here, sharing a spoonful of beans on a ship drifting toward hope. He could still see Garen's grin, hear Rick's laugh, feel Rex's shoulder bumping against his in battle. He squeezed his eyes shut. "I get it now," he murmured. "This isn't just survival anymore." He raised his gaze to the open horizon. "You gave your lives, so the rest of us could live." His voice caught in his throat. "Your stories will be remembered. I'll make sure of it." The next morning, the first to notice was the old man who never slept. He stood at the bow, blinking at the light breaking the horizon. For a moment, he thought it was a mirage, a cruel joke of the sea. But then the color deepened, the outline sharpened. It was no illusion. His voice cracked when he shouted it. "Land! Land ahoy!" The reaction was instant. Footsteps thundered across the deck. People scrambled from below, still rubbing sleep from their eyes. Children were hoisted onto shoulders. Some stood frozen, mouths agape. And then, there it was, a vast stretch of green, rising from the sea like a dream. Trees swayed in the wind, dense and tall. Rolling hills sprawled beyond them. Flowers bloomed in open fields, their colors piercing the dull palette everyone had grown used to. Even the air smelled different, cleaner, sweeter. Joy didn't erupt all at once. It built like a wave. Someone let out a sharp laugh. Another collapsed to their knees, crying into their hands. People hugged. Some stood in stunned silence, their minds catching up to what their eyes were seeing. Chris stood near the railing, gripping it tight. "I forgot what real green looked like." Maria wiped at her eyes, laughing through the tears. "It's beautiful. It's so lushful, like something out of a storybook." The little girl from the family was bouncing in place. "Mommy, look, there's trees, real trees." Her mother didn't answer. She was too busy staring at the land, one hand covering her mouth as tears streamed down her cheeks. Someone shouted, "I see a beach, a real beach. Is that a river?" "It's huge." "It's untouched," someone whispered. "There's no rot, no ruins. No monsters," another said, their voice trembling. "We're safe." Evan exhaled hard, his shoulders shaking. He turned and looked back at the people, broken, bruised, and tired, but now shining with something they hadn't known in a long time. Hope. He turned back toward the island, his voice low but certain. "Garen, Rick, Rex, you didn't fall in vain. This land, Seabird, is your legacy. Your sacrifice built this moment. You were the first, the founders." As the ship drifted ever closer to the shore, a breeze rolled through the deck, warm and carrying the scent of wildflowers and salt. For the first time in weeks, no one looked behind them. The survivors had begun to disembark, boots hitting warm sand and soft earth. The jungle at the edge of the beach swayed gently, welcoming them to the unknown. Children ran through shallow waves, laughing for the first time in what felt like forever. Some people simply knelt down and kissed the ground. Amid the commotion, Phoebe approached Evan, brushing the sea wind out of her face. Her voice was low but steady. "Evan," she said, "what now? Where do we even start?" Caleb came up beside her, gripping a shovel he'd found in the ship's storage. A fresh bandana was tied around his head. The scar on his cheek had scabbed over, but the fire in his eyes hadn't dulled. "We need shelter," Caleb said. "The island's big, yeah, but it's still wild. We gotta move smart." Delta nodded, arms crossed. "People are tired, hungry. We don't have time to wander around. We need a plan." Sawyer, the quietest of the bunch, stepped forward. His voice was barely more than a whisper. "We need leadership, Evan. That's you. What do we do first?" Evan looked at them. 4 survivors, hardened by fire and blood, now looking to him not as a fighter, but as a builder. Chris, Pamela, and Maria joined the small group and stood in silence, offering nothing but a firm nod in support. That was all Evan needed. He straightened up, cracked his neck, and said, "All right, gather everyone at the fireplace pit after we finish unloading. Let's move quick. We don't have much daylight." Later that evening, The sun was low, casting amber shadows across the clearing. A ring of stones had been placed in the sand, forming the island's first communal space, the fireplace. Driftwood crackled in the center, casting long shadows over a circle of tired but curious faces. Evan stepped forward, hands in his pockets, then slowly raised his head to address them all. "Hello, everyone, and welcome to Seabird Island." His voice echoed softly through the trees. "I know it ain't much right now. No homes, no roads, no walls. But this is the beginning. A work in progress. And with your help, we can make something here. Something real." The flames flickered in his eyes as he paused, taking a breath. "But before we talk about the future, I need to speak from the heart. Many of you already know what I mean. When I say this world took something from us, someone, something, I lost people close to me too." His voice cracked slightly. "People I loved, people I looked up to, like my big brothers, Garen, Rick, Rex." He scanned the crowd, eyes glistened, heads bowed. "They didn't just fight monsters. They fought for you, for us, and they gave everything, not in vain. But to carve out this chance we now stand on. If not for their sacrifice, that breaker would have gotten all of us. And they knew. Garen knew. He always knew best. And this time, he knew way too well. I'm sorry. Yeah, what I'm trying to say is..." He stepped closer to the fire, the light catching the tears slipping down his face. "So today, let's mark this moment. Let this day be remembered, not for their deaths, but for their heroic deeds. Let it be a celebration, not of endings, but of what they gave us. A future." Evan raised his fist high into the air. "For our heroes, let's build our kingdom." His voice rose, stronger than ever. "Let's bring back what we lost, brick by brick, voice by voice, until the world remembers who we are." "Humanity!" Chris shouted it back, loud and proud. "Humanity!" Pamela echoed it. "Humanity!" Then one by one, the entire group rose to their feet, fists in the air, voices tearing into the sky. "Humanity! Humanity! Humanity!" The island roared with them. And beneath the stars, on the shores of Seabird, hope was no longer just a whisper. It was a war cry. The first week on Seabird Island unfolded like a dream stitched together by grit, sweat, and sheer willpower. Every morning, just as the sky turned a pale gray and the birds began to stir, Evan was already awake. While the rest of the survivors were still buried in their blankets and tents, he was out on the beach, pushing his body to its limits. Push-ups in the sand until his arms shook. Sprints from shoreline to tree line and back. Shadow boxing with ghosts he couldn't bury. By the time the sun kissed the horizon, he was drenched in sweat. Breath steady, gaze focused. After a quick rinse in the freshwater stream, now dubbed Hope Creek, he would return to the center of camp, clean, alert, and ready to lead. Delegation came next. Evan had learned quickly. Leadership wasn't about doing everything. It was about trusting the right people. Sawyer became the construction and logistics coordinator. With a calm demeanor and sharp eyes, he mapped out blueprints in the sand using sticks and shells like a true island architect. He oversaw the farming area being cleared just past the tree line, and the foundations of the smithy being laid near the rocky ridge to the east, where black smoke wouldn't reach the homes. Maria was placed in charge of food organization. She gathered foragers and ration managers, creating a system that ensured fair distribution and zero waste. If it grew, she cataloged it. If it could be cooked, she found a way. Chris handled the logistics of supplies, weapons, tools, salvage from the ship, and leftover gear. He tracked everything with the precision of a man who understood what it meant to lose it all in a single careless moment. Pamela, surprisingly, thrived as the farming lead. She divided the land into plots, tested the soil, and worked with a small group of survivors to plant fast-growing crops like corn, beans, and sweet potatoes. Meanwhile, the combat training program launched on day 3. 20 volunteers stepped up, nervous, underfed, and most having never held a weapon in their lives. But they were tired of being prey. Delta, Caleb, and Fabi led the charge. Delta, sharp-eyed and always quiet, trained sniping and distance shooting. He had them balancing rifles on logs, breathing through stress, and learning to wait for the perfect shot. Most of them were shaky at best, struggling to hit anything past 50 yards. Caleb, fierce and loud, drilled them in pistol control and fast reflexes. He shouted until their stances were correct and made them run through reload drills until their hands bled. Only 3 of them passed his first live fire test. Phoebe, elegant but lethal, taught the art of the blade. Most laughed when they saw her pull out a sword, until they watched her slice through 4 wooden dummies in a blink. She taught precision, discipline, and the terrifying truth of close-quarter combat. Swinging wildly is for the dead, she told them. You're not here to survive a fight. You're here to win one. As for me, I joined the group now and then. Sometimes I'd train with the recruits, watching, learning, helping. But most days I had personal training sessions with the trio. Caleb worked with me on pistols, grit, accuracy, speed. Phoebe taught me swordplay. My arms sore for days, wrists red and raw. Delta took me into the trees, whispering the language of wind and patience. How to aim, how to breathe, how to kill without a sound. They pushed me hard, harder than anyone else. Maybe because they believed I could handle it. Maybe because they knew I'd need it soon. By the end of the week, Seabird had changed. Fences were being built. Tents were giving way to cabins. Crops had sprouted. Recruits were no longer afraid to hold a gun. The people were no longer just survivors. They were becoming something more. And beneath it all, a quiet, steady truth pulsed through the camp like a drumbeat. The war wasn't over. But when it returned, we'd be ready. The apocalypse, 1 year later. The waves crashed against the shoreline. The morning sun barely crested the horizon, casting a gold-red glow across the sand and steel. Where there used to be forest, now stood a fortress. A settlement, walls built from wrecked cars, scrap metal and concrete slabs, towering watchposts, camouflage netting, barricades manned by sharp-eyed sentinels, and in the middle of the beach, in the shadow of a broken lighthouse turned command post, stood a figure, me, Evan. Only, I wasn't the same. Sweat-drenched, dragging 3 truck tires chained to my waist, running uphill through the sand like it owed me blood. Each step thundered, every breath sharp, controlled. This was my morning. After that, 2 hours of punching reinforced bricks until my knuckles bled and bruised, then hardened. Pull-ups on rebar welded into the cliffs, spear throwing into moving targets, sprints with water barrels, underwater endurance drills, combat training against dummies made from infected carcasses, every single day. They used to say I was just a kid with a sharp tongue. Now, I was something else. The Horde took a lot from me. Now I train for one reason: to never ever let that happen again.